Hey guys, Scott here. Fairly exciting news in the Dead by Daylight world for once. It looks like we are actually going to be getting a Project Health-esque type thing. For those who don't know, Project Health is a term used for Rainbow Six Siege, where they did not really add new content for a little while and just focused on fixing the game as much as possible. Whether it ended up being a success or not is a point of contention, but that is the initial idea behind it. Now, I've been always kind of hesitant to say that they can do this because Dead by Daylight's player base will go down drastically during the time of no new chapters, no new releases, no new hype, and everything like that. But with Five Nights at Freddy's coming out in the summer, I understand before it comes out in June, they want to get this thing going really, really well, and they want the game to be as good as it can possibly be, which makes honestly a lot of sense. And truly, there are other ways to make money during this time period. They could sell new Moris. Basically, the cosmetic team is going to be on overdrive going through. They're going to be releasing a lot of shit in the next couple of months because they have to subsidize. There needs to be a makeup for the gap in not selling a new chapter. So that's why we're not going to get anything new for a while now. So on the one hand, yeah, that's kind of boring. That's going to be a pretty rough time for content creation in the DBD scene for the next couple of months. Nothing new, nothing exciting, and that sucks. But I fully understand that if it leads to what these changes are getting at, then it's obviously entirely worth it. And I'm not saying that they are listening to me specifically, because a lot of things that I talk about are problems in the game that most people agree are problems, and then I talk about ways to address them. So when I introduce, like, hey, we need a concede option, it's not like, oh, that's Scott's idea. It's, a lot of people have kind of had that idea, and then I try to give a more, refined take on exactly how to do something like that. So I'm not saying like they have specifically listened to me. They've listened sort of to the community, and I typically echo community problems. But it does seem like they just looked at that video I made where I talked about the things that DB need, like the top 10 things that they need to add. Fucking half of these things are on the list. It's incredible. Again, I know it has nothing to do with me. I just found that it's awesome that so many of these issues I have talked about for years and years and years seem like they're finally being addressed, which is really, really cool. Well, again, will they actually commit to it and do all of these things and have them be successful? This is the big gamble of a Project Health. If they do not succeed at fixing these issues and they waste all this time without new content, that's really bad for the game's health. The player base will be shot, and if they aren't fixing the problems that need to be fixed, that will be really bad. So this is a gamble for sure. It's definitely a gamble, and I hope it pays off, but I do think DBD needs a gamble at this point because we're almost going on like 10 years now. It needs something else. It needs some type of gamble. So I think this is overall a really good idea. Now, let's go over the actual specifics, but first, let's go over why they're doing this. To accommodate for the scope of this initiative, we've decided to delay several of our upcoming releases, including chapters, rifts, event modifiers, and collections. This means there will not be a PTB tomorrow, but rest assured, we do not make this decision lightly. We feel confident that delaying our upcoming releases, prioritize this quality of life initiative, will ultimately make Dead by Daylight stronger than ever. We're always listening to our players, and this has been a long time coming. Looking for a more comprehensive breakdown of everything lined up in Phase 1, we've got you covered. So let's go over the main things that they're going over. Number 1, the surrender state, or a concede option, basically. The concede option has always been a requested thing. A lot of people don't necessarily want this. Typically more on the killer side, they don't want this because, I'm going to just say it, a lot of killers want to live out their power fantasy of beating the shit out of 4 players, and they don't want them to be able to give up early. At the same time, you also don't want this thing to be abusable. You don't want, Timmy to get downed on first, and within 30 seconds of the game starting, and then his survivor friend goes, okay, fuck it, we're out. We don't want to play anymore, and they all just give up. You don't want that either. So you need to find that balance between, okay, this game is clearly over, and let's not let this killer just get a power trip for no reason. And I think they've kind of gotten it here. So the conditions for this are the survivors have all been slugged. If there's 4 people on the ground, they're all slugged, then the team can concede, which, to be fair, the game's over, unless someone's got Unbreakable or something, at which point they wouldn't concede because they have a perk to try to save the scenario. If everyone's been slugged, the game's over. Like, there's no reason to continue that match. There's no way the survivors can mysteriously just revive themselves, and again, unless they have a perk, at which point they wouldn't concede. But this makes perfect sense. It's only triggered by something the killer does. So only the killer can make this scenario happen where they're all slugged. I will say there's one possible exploit with that, and that's with plot twist. I can already foresee people bringing plot twist, everyone being injured, and they all just kill themselves and they go to concede. So there will have to be a caveat there for plot twist specifically. So I hope the devs think of that. But overall, this is sort of a no-brainer. You can't abuse the scenario. Only the killer can cause that scenario. So I think that is completely fine. Or if all the remaining survivors are bots as the killer, because the killer doesn't want to play against 4 bots. Obviously, that's boring. You're just playing an offline match at that point. If you're the entire team you're going against is bots, let the killer just fucking leave. Like, the game is over. So once these instances occur, players will be able to use the surrender option, ending the trial while retaining the blood points they've earned up until that point and escaping the disconnect penalty. This is just great. I don't really see any downsides to this. There's a couple of fringe scenarios where it could be slightly abusable, but we're talking like 1 in 100 games, and it's going to save a lot of headache for way more games. So it's overall a net positive. If we go like utilitarian here, it's just a net positive for the game. So overall, this is a great decision, something that I and a lot of people have suggested for a very, very, very long time, and it's very awesome that it's going to be added relatively soon. Next, gamma adjustments. This is just basically if your screen is too dark and you can't see shit. I don't really find this to be a problem anymore. I haven't been clamoring for them to fix this. Now, back in the day, in 2016, 2017, even 2018, maps were dark as shit. There was a whole reason that, you would see the P3 Claudette on a Macmillan map with fog offering. You're never seeing her ever again. It was really, really hard to see back in the day, but they have sort of, over time, kind of brightened up everything, and hell, there's just daylight maps now. There's Ormond, which is just daylight and snow. So this is not like a huge problem, but I guess some people that don't have like monitors with specific settings like that, like I use a gaming monitor that has, brightness enhancing modes and stuff like that. So it's not a problem for me, but that doesn't mean it's not a problem for other people. So I think this is fine. I know some opponents of this might go, oh, well, it breaks the whole spirit of DBD being, it's dark and scary and stuff. Dude, that sailed a long time ago. We haven't been like that for like 6 years. So just let people see the game at this point. I think that's totally fine. Go next prevention. Oh man. Again, this has been a very, very hotly contended, is that a word, topic in the game, because it's a really hard problem to fix. How do you determine when going next is justified? How do you determine when it even is go next to begin with? Are they just trying to Kobe? Like, it's pretty hard to automate this process. So this is the one I'm probably the most worried about with how they implement it. But let's read. The go next expression refers to instances where a survivor deliberately does everything in their power to quickly go to the next game, including walking up to the killer and standing still, running to a hook and repeatedly pointing at it, or most commonly, intentionally failing skill checks on hook. To disincentivize and properly penalize this behavior, we'll be implementing measures that will help us identify when a player is attempting to go next. Once identified, they will receive a disconnection penalty point and lose an entire grade. We will be keeping a close eye on the system to ensure its accuracy, but we're confident this will help alleviate the issue. So that's scary. They're trying to basically automate identifying when this is happening. And a lot of these scenarios are very obvious. It's a no-brainer. This guy is obviously killing himself. He's obviously going next. We can see this. You don't even need to, have a discussion about it. But there are some times when I think this is going to result in a false positive, especially when their system is new and they're still tweaking it. It's going to result in a false positive, and we're going to start having people getting timed out for doing nothing wrong. And that really concerns me. That's the type of thing that draws lots of negative press. You're going to see fucking Kotaku articles about this player banned for 1 day for blah, 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 blah. That's the whole thing I'm worried about. I can kind of see that happening, and they really need to err on the side of leniency rather than the side of it being strict. And I think once they start getting it more accurate, they can start making it over time a bit more strict. But the first version of this has to be very, very lenient, or we're going to see some really bad press and a lot of bad things happening. So be very careful with this part. It does need to happen, and I'm glad that they're doing it, but they do need to be very, very careful. So start off very lenient. That's my only suggestion there. On the other hand, we'd like to reward players who stick it out through these challenging matches, and even when things take a dire turn. We'll be moving forward with a new emblem-based multiplier that grants additional blood points during your following match, with the bonus stacking over consecutive trials. So I wanted to reward players with the prop system, but this is another way you can do it as well. I think this is fine. I think rewarding players that do stick around and they do play as good teammates deserve more of a reward than people that are just doing nothing. And I think, yeah, this is fine. I still would love to see them utilize the prop system in some way. But if they're going off of emblems, this is basically going to be like, if someone was getting chased for the entire game and all their other emblems were terrible, at least, the emblem in which they get chased would be very, very good. Or if someone did 4 generators themselves, their Lightbringer emblem would be really, really good. So they should get multipliers for contributing that much to that particular point of the match. So I'm hoping that's kind of what they're hinting at here. It might also detect whether or not they are in a losing scenario, but they're continuing to play anyway. That's the kind of behavior that should be rewarded. But that one's a bit more vague, and I need to see more specifics before we speculate any further on that. Extreme hiding and body block prevention. Again, this is another thing I actually just talked about on that top 10 changes that the game needs. You have had that scenario before where somebody just sits and body blocks you to troll you, and you can't do anything until you disconnect. Now they're making it so how AFK crows happen, you're going to be able to just walk through them. Additionally, once a player receives crows, their location will be immediately revealed to the killer. So this is the removal of the collision right here. This is fine. I think this is all great. No one likes those scenarios at the end of the match where there's like 1 or 2 people left, but there's multiple gens. So, they obviously aren't going to work on gens. They're both just ratting, waiting for one of the other people to die so they can get the hatch. That's a very boring scenario for everyone involved. So it seems like as soon as they get a single crow, their locations is going to be immediately revealed rather than having to wait for all 3 crows there. So that's completely fine. And then the third AFK crow is still relevant for removing the body blocking, so you can actually not troll people and lock them in corners and things like that. So again, all great changes, fixing very boring issues of the map. Perfect. Map offerings, again, something I talk about every 25 minutes. We recognize that map offerings are a bit divisive. Some players enjoy them, while others feel they can grant an unfair advantage. The fact that they automatically bypass both the map and realm repetition system can also add to that frustration. Moving forward, map offerings will no longer guarantee the appearance of a given map, but rather increase the chances by 20%. Note that they will not stack. This is sort of bringing it how to the original map offerings used to be. I still have a couple of them on my Huntress and my Claudette, I think, but there were original map offerings that were like gray rarity, and then there were also yellows that kind of did the same thing but had even more of a chance. It seems like we're just going back to the gray rarity, which is great. Being able to choose the map that you go to when the maps are so imbalanced is stupid. It just basically can determine who's going to win before the match even starts, and it's been for almost 9 years straight the most complained about thing in the entire game. Obviously, the maps being imbalanced is the true problem, but until that's fixed, being able to choose the imbalanced maps whenever you want is obviously an extremely huge issue, and it seems like they're finally going to be able to address that. We're looking to make it so map offerings as well as other types of offerings will remain a secret during load-in. That way, your decision to remain in the match will not be swayed by external factors. So, on the flip side, they will be far less common to guarantee something, but now you won't see what that map is going to be. So if the killer burns a Larry's offering, you're not going to know that he's burning a Larry's offering. Nowadays, if a killer burns a Larry's offering, you're like, okay, I wonder what type of Myers build he's going to have. Or if you see like a Midwich offering, you're like, okay, I wonder what type of like knight or nurse this is going to be. It kind of tells you what you're going to be going against before you even go against it. So I think that is useful. If you see survivors, burn a Badham offering, you know that they're fucking assholes. So that is going to be great that you're not going to be able to see what it is, but it's also far less guaranteed. So ideally, we just fix the maps in general, but until they do that, nerfing map offerings is an absolute no-brainer. I can't imagine anyone's going to ever disagree with any of these things. Spawn rules. Again, I have made multiple videos about this too. In fact, I made a very specific video about this exact thing where gen speeds are not as much of an issue as people think. It's really the survivor spawn placements. When survivors spawn all pre-spread out, I cannot tell you how much of an impact that has on the match. That's like having 2 gen perks on every survivor for free. They don't have to waste the 15 seconds going to a generator and then waste even more time spreading out to be truly optimal. Sometimes survivors just spawn on 4 separate gens and the killer is just fucked. There's nothing you can do against that. Even if you have Corrupt Intervention, you can't block all 4. There's just no way. So this typically happens when the killer spawns in the center of the map. Ormond is a very notorious example of this. You'll spawn in the middle, and your Corrupt Intervention won't really be relevant because it's going to pick random ones because you're in the middle. It's kind of hard to pick the furthest generators. So that makes it really, really hard to deal with, and survivors are just spread out, and you can't even begin to maintain pressure if everyone is already pre-spread out. Let's read what they have to say, though. Survivor spawn placements have become a significant impact on the trial's outcome, an observation that has been repeatedly recognized by our community. It's become clear that survivors spawning separately and thereby covering more ground allows them to gain a notable advantage in completing their objective. We're changing the default survivor spawn rules to ensure each survivor will spawn within 12 meters of one another on the same floor. To accommodate for this change, shroud offerings will be adjusted accordingly. The shroud offerings will probably be reversed because they make no sense. They basically debuff the role that you're currently in. But again, this is fantastic. I have made so many complaints about this. A lot of people don't realize how impactful your spawn is to a match. A lot of times they'll be running 4 slowdowns and still lose, not knowing why. They lost 3 gens in the first 2 or 3 minutes. This is why. It's because the spawns are causing survivors to have way too much of an advantage at the start. They should always spawn together and have to spread out. Again, doesn't take very long. Takes an additional 15 seconds. But that additional 15 seconds is huge for killer pressure in the early game when they are at their weakest. So perfect decision. 0 complaints. Next, AFK bot detection. Players that use AFK bots can be frustrating to have in your trial, and we're working on improvements to detection systems so we can identify and penalize them accordingly. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever seen one of these ever in my life. Not a huge issue, at least in my opinion, but great. No complaints there. Bulk blood point spending. Again, something we've all suggested. To speed up general blood web activity, we're adding a button that allows you to spend blood points in bulk. You got 2 million. I'm assuming click a button, spends 2 million, you get a bunch of shit. Perfect. Again, no complaints. I cannot think of a single person opposed to this. The quest system. This is something I actually haven't really ever talked about. Previously announced last year, the quest system is part of a larger update to the archives and rifts, so expect more information in an article specifically dedicated to that. For now, know that we will be reworking the challenges system as well as daily rituals to reduce the grind, make it easier to earn rewards, and increase the overall level of fun. What this could mean, I have no idea. I'm assuming there are going to be more interesting things than, hit someone with 5 hatchets, and that's your daily or something like that. So it's probably going to be more interesting shit there. Maybe some type of quest log or something. Anything further here I say is pure speculation. I actually know nothing about this. I have no leaked information about this. I'm clueless on what this actually means, so we'll just see what they actually do there. Perk loadouts and preview. After a successful round of A/B testing, we'll be allowing players to see their own perk loadouts while in a lobby, as well as adding additional perk loadout slots. Now, curiously, they say their own perk loadouts while in a lobby. They don't say other players' perk loadouts, and I don't know why they're so opposed to this. Maybe this is what they mean here, but they specifically worded it to see their own perk loadouts while in a lobby. So I don't really know what the fuck this means. It doesn't, you can already see your perk loadout in a lobby. You just go to your character and you see your perk. So I don't really know what this means. If this means see your teammates' perks, fantastic. That's exactly what everybody wants, and it's a no-brainer. I don't really know what this line means, I'm gonna be honest. But that's it. We believe these changes will be an overall benefit to Dead by Daylight's health, for further establishing a positive gaming environment for all of our players. We'd like to thank you for your patience and understanding during this time. We'll be back at our anniversary broadcast in May to recap Part 1 and provide deeper insight into Part 2 of our roadmap, so keep an eye for that announcement. In the meantime, we're looking forward to hearing your thoughts and feedback. So, what a actual update. I could not have suggested more things in an update myself. This is really, really good shit. I am just curious how it's going to go. They're saying a lot of really good stuff here. But to be a little cynical, there have been times when behavior has said that they were going to do things and they just don't do them. Whether it's impossible or they try and failed, I don't know. But they have repeatedly said that they were going to fix something and then have it not be fixed. Flashbangs, for example. They said they fixed this shit like 3 times, still not fixed. The Spirit Husk audio, they said they fixed it 4 times now, still not fixed. So you have to take a little bit of what they say with a grain of salt, because sometimes they do say things and then they just don't follow up on them at all. So I would love if all of these things came to fruition and were perfectly added. We'll just need to see what actually happens. But the next couple of months, it's going to be an interesting time. And by that, I mean it's going to be a very boring, uninteresting time because there's not really going to be much to do. So I guess expect a bunch more top 10s or something, because I don't know what to make content out of. There's nothing new happening for a long time. So I do think that we need to take the hit for the game's overall longevity and health. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a rough few months. And yeah, I'm curious to see how this ends up working. It seems all great so far, but curious to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.